What's going on, everybody? It's your big homie, the Armchair Operator, and welcome to today's video. Now, if you're new to my channel, welcome. If you enjoyed today's content, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. Become a part of the family. We would love to have you. And if you're coming back to my channel, thank you so much for coming back to the channel. I really do appreciate it, and I hope that you also enjoyed today's content. Now, today we're doing a battle of the FDE competition style full-size pistols. We're going to pit this Beretta 92XI SABBIA chambered in 9mm, the single action only, up against this SIG P320 DH3, also chambered in 9mm. But before we get into that, first, a bit of housekeeping. I got to give a huge shout out to the team over at the Bunker Gun Shop. They have been big supporters of this channel since day one, and without their continued support, these videos would not be possible. So big thanks to all of them. And the second bit of housekeeping, I am not offering for sale any firearms or accessories on this channel. This video is strictly for educational purposes only. Now that I've got that important information out of the way, let's get into what this video is really all about. If you're not familiar with my versus videos, they tend to go a little something like this. I put two near peer firearms together and see how they compare with one another in terms of purpose, form, fit, function, and price point to see which one will essentially come out on top. The whole purpose of these videos is just to give you, the viewer, more information as you're out there shopping for your next firearm. Again, these experiences are largely, my opinion is highly subjective, but I do my best to take as much subjectivity out of my decision making as I'm going through these versus videos. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to head on over to the range and see how these two firearms compare up against one another. And then we're going to come back to the review space and do a more in-depth tabletop comparison and take a look at the features and what each particular firearm comes with, talk a bit about price points, and I'm gonna give you my final thoughts. So all right, so without further ado, let's head on over to the range. Let's get this thing started. All right, y'all, welcome to the range portion of this versus video between the Beretta 92XI SABBIA and the SIG P320 DH3. Now, just like in my previous versus videos, essentially when it comes to this, we're looking for shootability and reliability. So how reliable they are, pretty simple enough. And when it comes to shootability, since I really can't communicate how a firearm feels as far as felt recoil in my hand over video, we're just basically going to look and see which particular one that I can be the most proficient with, meaning whichever one has the tightest groups overall between two courses of fire will win the point for that category. So we got the target up at 7 yards, and for what we're going to do is the top left target is going to be for the Beretta, and the top right target is going to be for the SIG. All right, so without further ado, let's get to work. Okay, now time for the DH3. Now granted, I still got the gas pedal on here, so it's a little unfair, but not really. You still got to do everything right. And we're out. Let's check the target. All right, so this is what we're working with right here. This is the Beretta on the left and the DH3 on the right. While the DH3 is good, the Beretta, man, that speaks for itself. And see, that really comes down to Beretta it's a lot easier to find that reset. So it might seem like there's a lot of take up at first, but once you hit the wall and you stage that trigger, man, she gonna fly like a Ferrari. We're gonna put some fresh targets up there and let's run it again. All right, so for this second and last course of fire for this particular versus video, we're gonna push the target out at 10 yards. We're gonna just do the same thing again. The target on the left is going to be for the Beretta, the target on the right is going to be the DH3, and whichever one has the tightest groups is going to win. All right, so let's get to it. First up, the Beretta. No hiccups, that's what we like. Now it's time for the DH3. All right, let's check that target. This is kind of close, y'all. They all look good. And this is the Beretta over here. So if I have to call it, which I have to call it obviously because it's my video, both shot well, but I have to give the shootability part over to the Beretta. That turn to 0 and that trigger set was the difference between the two. As far as reliability, tie, so they each get a point for that. All right, so enough of this. Let's head on over to the review space and let's do the tabletop in-depth comparisons of these two particular firearms. If this is it for you, I definitely appreciate you watching this video. Thank you for stopping by. And if you would like that in-depth tabletop review, come on over with me to the review space and let's get down to business. Okay, everybody, welcome to the review space. I hope you enjoyed the range portion of the video. So just to recap, both pistols were reliable, so they both get a point in the reliability category. However, the Beretta 92XI did win the shootability portion over the DH3 by just a hair. So that puts the Beretta in the league right now. So now we're going to move into the features category, but first thing we're going to do, we're going to verify clear. So I have chamber flags in each firearm, but still, just for the safety gurus, as you can see, magazine is empty, chamber is empty. This, oh, safe direction, boom, this firearm is verified clear. And this particular firearm, chamber flag removed, magazine is empty, chamber is empty, firearm is clear. Now, so for the features, I like to start with the sights. So for the purposes of this comparison, we're not really going to talk about the red dots too much, but we will talk about the optics mounting system. So for the sights, we have a red fiber optic front sight for the Beretta and a blacked out serrated rear sight, and we have a green tritium filled front sight, and we also have tritium filled night sights on the back. These are SIG's XS optics height sights. And for the sights, I have to give it to the DH3. I just prefer this sighting setup a bit more over the Beretta. So the SIG is going to get that particular feature point. Next, we're going to talk about the slide serrations. So both firearms have slide serrations. The Berettas, I think, in my opinion, are a bit more aggressive overall. Just makes it easier to grab. While you can still do the same thing with the DH3, But the DH3 also have these cuts that could help you to move the slide. So it does have that, but just in terms of the slide serrations alone, I prefer the slide serrations on the Beretta. So we're going to give the Beretta that particular feature credit. Next, we're going to move down to the trigger. So both firearms have very good triggers in my opinion, and they have their pluses and their minuses. So let's start here. This particular gun, again, is a single action only trigger design. It has a lot of pre-travel, but once you hit that wall, it has a nice light break, and the reset on this thing is really nice. So check the reset. Very short, which allows you to get right back on the wall again. So it really helps you to go fast. So I really do like that. Now for the SIG, this is a striker gun. I mean, for a striker trigger, it's pretty hard. It's pretty good in my opinion. Just a little bit of pre-travel, then you hit the wall, and now we get the reset. So the brake is a little bit heavier than the Beretta in my opinion, and the reset is a little bit longer, but it doesn't have as much pre-travel. So as far as triggers go, I'm basically just going to give them a tie. They both have their pluses and their drawbacks, and I still think that they're pretty decent for what they are. Next, let's move on down to the Magwell. So both particular firearms get a credit for having a Magwell that comes with it. So that's pretty much self-explanatory. Don't need to dwell too much on that. Now we're going to talk about the pink elephant in the room, the optics mounting system. So the Beretta comes cut for a red dot, but it does not come with the optics plate. Now I know in my review I said that the SABBIA comes with an optics plate. Although mine did come with an optics plate, I did not purchase this firearm new. When you get it new from Beretta, you will have to order the optics plate. So that is definitely a con. But it is cut for an optic. So, however, the DH3 on the other hand comes fully optics ready out of the box. You just have to get either a SIG pattern optic or another optic that uses the Delta Point Pro footprint, and you could just do a direct mount to the optic. The other direct mount to the slide, my apologies. The advantage to that is that you get a natural co-witness, which I think is really good, whereas clearly on the Beretta you do not get a co-witness. You would have to change both of these sights to some really tall suppressor height sights in order to get a co-witness with that. So in terms of the optic setup, I gotta give the point over to the SIG for that one, because you can put a dot on the slide right out of the box. Next, both firearms get a point for the accessory rail. The SIG has a longer accessory rail than the Beretta, but that really doesn't matter. Next, we're going to talk about modularity. Well, I don't really think that's fair, because the P320 is a modular platform from the rip. So this gun gets the point for modularity. Sorry, Beretta, you lose on that one. And last thing, we're going to talk about the barrels themselves. So the Beretta has a standard, it has like a I want to say this is like a 5.1 inch threaded barrel. Good barrel, very accurate, will get the job done. The great thing about having this thread on here is that you can easily put a thread on compensator, which Beretta has those available on their site, and also a suppressor. So that's really good. In case you didn't know, Beretta 92 series pistols make excellent suppressor hooks. Now let's go on to the DH3. Now the DH3 actually has a match grade bull barrel. Has a bit of a crown there, as you can see. This barrel is very good, very accurate, and it will get the job done. So I don't really think that one barrel stands over the other in terms of points wise, so I'm just going to tie them out for that. And with all of that being said, I have to give the feature point over to the DH3 in this category. It just checked more boxes overall than the Beretta. So we're going to give the SIG the point. Next, let's talk about ergonomics. Now we're going to talk about the ergonomics of both pistols. And first things first, I like the ergonomics of both handguns. They each have their advantages and they have their drawbacks. So let's start with the Beretta. The Beretta has these wonderful FDE G10 style grips that are very aggressive. and the grip angle is very 1911-esque, and your hand just kind of melts in there, or my hand just kind of melts in there, especially with this Magwell. It has excellent texture, so you can really get a good grip on this particular gun, even if your hands are wet or sweaty or whatever the case may be. So I think that's really good. Where this kind of falls short for me, in a kind of sorta, is when I grab it with my support hand, and it's very easy for me to get blisters on this takedown lever when I'm holding the gun with my support hand grip, because as you can see, kind of where my thumb falls, which is not a huge deal. I mean, I could cheat it a little bit and just put it, brace it somewhere so I don't rub against this part of the takedown lever, so that's not really a big deal. But overall, I think this is very good from an ergonomic standpoint. Now let's move to the SIG. This also surprisingly feels good in the hand, even though this is the small grip module and I tend to like a longer length of pull for my trigger finger. There's just something about this grip where it just feels like it melts in my hand. I don't know if it's the shape combined with the Magwell or whatever the case may be, but I have really come to really enjoy this grip. It's really nice. Now, a bit of a caveat, this gas pedal here, I added this. This is a SIG OEM part, but I added this after I bought the pistol. Normally, the pistol comes with just your standard P320 style takedown lever, so I just wanted to put that out there. So this does help the ergonomics of this pistol quite a bit, but it's not needed in my opinion. I had an M17 for years and I never had a gas pedal on that, and I ran that thing just fine. So that being said, I'm going to tie them out with ergonomics. Like I said, I like them both. They have their pluses and they have their drawbacks, but either way, I still think they're pretty good. Okay, let's move on to the next category. Next, we're going to talk about ammo capacity, and I have all the magazines that each firearm comes with when you first buy them. And just for safety reasons, I put the chamber flags back in the firearm, because as you can see, I do have a couple of charged magazines here. So I just wanted to show this to show that both firearms are still clear and we're in a safe controlled environment. Now, about the Beretta. The Beretta 92XI comes with 3 22 round magazines. Now the Beretta, and the SIG DH3 comes with 3 21 round magazines. So obviously the Beretta is going to win the ammo capacity out of the box, because each magazine can carry 1 more round over the P320. So the Beretta is going to get the point for that. However, I'm just going to add this in as a bit of a disclosure. For something about these Beretta magazines are a little weird. When I first got the pistol, one of the magazines was able to accept all 22 rounds with no problem. However, the other 2, I had issues loading the magazines as I got past the 18th round, so to speak. And over time, one of the magazines loosened up a bit so I can load it to full capacity. But even to this day, I still can't get the other magazine past 18 rounds. I don't know why. Maybe it'll work itself out at some point. It's a little weird. They're quality Metgar magazines, and Metgars make excellent 92 style magazines. They have been doing it for years. So I don't know what the issue is. I haven't really looked into it, but on paper, the Beretta comes with 3 22 round magazines. The P320 DH3 comes with 3 21 round magazines. So the Beretta gets the point for ammo capacity. Next, we're going to talk about the MSRP for both of these particular pistols. Now, the DH3 comes in at about 1,399 units of measure, while the Beretta 92XI SABBIA, from my research, clocks in at about 1,329 units of measure. So they're similarly priced, but the Beretta is slightly cheaper. Now, your street price, as always, will vary depending on your area and where you're able to find these particular firearms for sale. However, like I said, they're priced quite a bit close together, but the Beretta is slightly cheaper in that regard. So the Beretta will get the MSRP category. Next, we're going to talk about aftermarket support, and both of these particular firearms are well supported in the aftermarket in terms of magazines, in terms of holsters, in terms of internal components. I mean, the 92 platform from Beretta has been out over 50 years now, and while the SIG P320 platform is relatively new compared to the Beretta, there are so many different things that you can get for the SIG, it's not even funny. And that is largely attributed to the fact that this is a modular handgun. I mean, grip modules, trigger shoes, magwells, magazine base plates, you name it, you can pretty much find it for this particular gun. So you can trick it out however you want. That being said, I'm going to have to give the aftermarket support point over to the SIG, simply because you can just kind of, it's a lot easier to find things for a SIG P320 than it is for a Beretta 92 series pistol. And with that, we're going to move into the next category, which is essentially the value for the money. And just kind of building off of the aftermarket support, I'm going to actually give the value point over to the SIG as well, because like I said, you can get yourself a P320, you could even get an M17 and do it up and make it look like a DH3 without spending an arm of 3 or 4 legs. The M17 slide and barrel will fit on this DH3, this X5 style frame. I have done it, so it works. So, like I said, if you want to build or hodgepodge your own custom works competition style P320, you could actually do that if you want to. But it's a lot harder to do that with the Beretta. With the Beretta, you kind of get what you get. Now, that's not to say that you can't do things to increase the performance of your Beretta, because you absolutely can. You can get Langdon tactical components. You could get other different things and really build this thing up and let it run like a Formula One car if you want. But for what you get and the ease of being able to customize this particular platform to your liking, I got to give the value point over to the DH3. Next, we're going to talk about the weight of these particular pistols. And now the weight is one of those things that is definitely going to be up to the person who's making the decision. I will say that I did weigh these particular firearms prior to this, and this firearm fully loaded, the DH3, comes in at about 53.90 ounces, while with the optic on the top. While the 9211 SABBIA fully loaded with the optic comes in at about 47.73 ounces. So I am going to give the Beretta the point for it being a lighter firearm. However, some people may prefer the extra heft of the P320. But in this case, I'm going to give the Beretta that particular point. And now, with all of that being said, let's tally up the score and let's see what we're left with. Okay, so let's recap. The 9211 gets the shootability point, while both pistols have been reliable throughout so far, so they both get a point in that category. The features point is going to go to the DH3, while the ammo capacity point is going to go to the 9211. Weight, again, weight is one of those subjective things, and I gave the weight point over to the Beretta just because it's slightly lighter than that of the DH3. Next, we talked about the ergonomics, and both firearms got a tie for ergonomics. And as far as the MSRP, the 9211 is slightly cheaper than the DH3, so the 9211 gets the point in that category. And as far as both aftermarket support and the value for the money, the DH3 actually got a point in both of those categories, which brings us to a grand total of 5 for the DH3 and 6 for the Beretta 9211 SABBIA, making the Beretta the winner of this versus. And we're back. So the winner of this versus is the Beretta 9211 SABBIA. And I have to say, I really like this gun. It is a phenomenal shooter. It's flat dark earth, but they're both flat dark earth, right? And I'm a Beretta 9211 fan. I had an M9A4. I love that. My first 9mm was a Beretta, so I really like the Beretta platforms. And I did the best that I could to take as much subjectivity out of this particular comparison. But of course, since it's basically my opinion, it's all going to be largely subjective. Now, for armchair's choice, which one would I choose if I could only pick one? If I had to pick one and only one, which one would I pick? And believe it or not, I would pick the DH3. The reason being, there's a lot, I think it's a lot easier to take this particular gun and, you know, take it where you want to go because of the modularity. If I want to put an SXG grip module on here, which I may very well do in the future, just to give it a little bit more weight and change the feel and the balance of the gun, I could absolutely do that. If I want to put an AXG module on here, I can do that too. Like, there's a lot of different things that you can do with this. Also, I can put a dot on this particular gun right out of the box without having to get any optics plates for it. Now, I was fortunate enough to not have to do that with the Beretta, but with Berettas you gotta source the plates. Now, this is an OEM Beretta plate. I believe Langdon Tactical has plates that are slightly thinner than this. I might look into that, I don't really know, but point is, if you have to go out and get a plate, to me that gun is not fully optics ready out of the box. It may have an optics cut, but if I can't throw a dot on this thing out of the box, it doesn't count. That's just my opinion. But like I said, overall, in this particular versus, I would pick the DH3, even though the Beretta actually won. Now, what do you think about the Beretta 92XI SABBIA and the SIG P320 DH3? Let me know down in the comment section. Let's get this discussion popping. Now, I already know that SIG has been all on social media for the P320 controversy. I already know where some of these comments are going to go, and that's fine. Definitely leave them down there below. Again, this is our opinions at the end of the day, but let me know what y'all think. And as always, thank you so much for watching this video. This is your big homie, the armchair operator, and I'm signing out, y'all. Peace.